Today, we're bringing Kepler 22b into our planetary neighborhood. Where would this planet need to orbit within the Sun's habitable zone? How would you go visit it? And would you find life when you got there? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Kepler 22b was in our solar system. Located 635 light-years away from Earth, Kepler 22b is the first exoplanet discovered inside of the habitable zone of a Sun-like star. And that means Kepler 22b has a chance to be covered with liquid water. While it's still not known whether it's rocky, gaseous, or liquid, we do know it's pretty big. Kepler 22b is almost 2.5 times larger and about 36 times more massive than Earth. Based on its distance from its own star, in our solar system, Kepler 22b would exist somewhere between Earth and Venus. And if it orbited there, you'd get a magnificent view of the planet in the night sky. It would appear about as large as 15% of our own full moon. Now, our Sun is slightly bigger and hotter than Kepler 22b's host star, Kepler 22. And that increase in temperature might make it too hot to host life. Also, why should Kepler 22b get its own orbit when it could share ours? What could possibly go wrong with that? If Kepler 22b was to snuggle comfortably into our orbital path, there are only a few places it would be able to go. Those are called Lagrange points. One of those points would be on the exact opposite side of the Sun from Earth. But unfortunately, that would come with a few downsides. For starters, you wouldn't ever be able to see it. That's because it would always be behind the Sun from our perspective down here on Earth. But worse than that, this location wouldn't guarantee it a stable orbit. It could get derailed and head directly toward Earth. And that would be the end of life on both worlds. But at least you'd end up with a decent view when the two planets were on a direct collision course with each other. The better, more stable option would be for Kepler 22b to nestle into orbit at the Lagrange points located 60 degrees ahead and behind Earth. Here, a third body could maintain a consistent orbit around the Sun and not get gravitationally pulled into Earth. Then, Kepler 22b would have a chance of hosting its own life. This planet is about 500 million years younger than Earth, and if it formed in our solar system about the same time Earth did, it would have had more than enough time for various life forms to evolve. Maybe even intelligent ones. Think about how amazing it would be to visit our neighbor and maybe even establish communication with whoever or whatever inhabited Kepler 22b. But even with this new Earth 2.0 safely sharing our habitable spot around the Sun, getting to it would be a bit of a challenge. You see, our planet is constantly being pulled toward the Sun by the Sun's enormous gravity. But it's also trying to move straight into space at the speed of 108,000 kilometers per hour. So if we wanted to visit Kepler 22b, we'd have to manage to counteract that sideways motion of our planet. Otherwise, we'd keep moving sideways and we'd miss our new planetary neighbor. The best thing you could do is swing around Venus for a little gravity assist. This is a technique that allows your spacecraft to increase or decrease the energy of its orbit. In other words, you could use Venus to slow down and arrive at your destination. time you started your mission to Earth 2.0, you'd already know what kind of temperature and air this world had. If Kepler 22b was so close to us, settling on it could be easier than moving to Mars. Once you settled on the planet, you'd start desalinating its ocean water and set up hydro and solar power stations. Now, food, on the other hand, would be a bit tricky. Initially, growing plants imported from Earth would require greenhouses with regulated temperatures and humidity levels to keep your favorite potatoes from dying. But as you studied the planet more, outdoor gardens could become a reality. Or you could start developing a taste for the high-protein algae that you might find growing in the superocean. And if you're really lucky, you could discover life. Maybe even intelligent life. But it doesn't seem likely that you'll do that because Kepler 22b didn't form in our solar system. If you ever wanted to land on its alien surface, you'd need to travel hundreds of light years and be prepared to overcome a long list of obstacles. Okay, so what if you did travel all the way to Kepler 22b? Well, that's a story for another What If.